Hey you, welcome to or welcome back to Motivation Maven. I'm Keisha and I'm your host. This is a sub-show of the Preventative Mental Health Show where we're focused on motivation and inspiration to combat procrastination. So I have a number of questions for you today, but the first one is, are you competitive? Are you competitive? So there's always this huge scale, right? There's those folks that are like, I'm uber competitive. As soon as you tell me something's a challenge, I'm in it and I'm in it to win it. And then you have the folks that are like, I don't want anything to do with competition. I don't like the stress. I don't like the worry. I just don't want it. Okay. It just stresses me out. But the reality is we're all in this competition and it's called life. Yes, we're all in it. Now, the reality is we all have a different worldview. Some of us look at life as a race. Some of us look at life as just this personal journey and that we're moving at our own pace. But that is exactly what I want us to discuss today. Moving at our own pace. When we look at life as a race and when we look at life through our own pace, it creates two different experiences. And I gotta tell you, I've experienced both, and there's definitely one that I lean to more. And I find more fulfillment out of knowing that I can move at my own pace on my own journey. Because when we get so focused on running this race, we want to win, but we don't necessarily enjoy it. We're pushing and we're pushing and we're running as fast as we can. And we're missing out on the experiences. We're missing out on the education. We're missing out on just the quiet moments of life. You know, there's something to be said, especially as we get older, when you just sit in your car in silence for hours. You're just sitting in your thoughts or just looking out the window and just appreciating nature because we are moving at such a rapid pace. Sometimes we just seek to slow down a bit. So this past weekend, I went on a little road trip, and I had my children with me, my sons, and I have a teenager. Well, no, I can't even call him a preteen. He is a teenager. He's 13, and we started talking about kids. I don't know how we got on the topic, and I mentioned to him, yeah, I had my oldest pretty young. I was around 22 when I had him, and he always says he's not going to have kids, and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're pretty young to try to make that decision at this very moment. And one of the things that he said was he just wants an opportunity to just kind of figure out who he is. And I let him know that that's totally okay. Just because his dad and I had him young, it doesn't mean that that has to be his same path. And the reality is there are some people that don't have kids. And again, that is perfectly fine. But you don't have to base your life on other people's experiences. Everybody's going to move through different milestones at different times, and that's okay. But it's finding what works for you. And when we're so focused on meeting everyone else's timelines, we end up missing out on our own personal journey. Because when you're so focusing on that race, there's this finish line, but the reality is the finish line for each and every one of us is different because our goals are different. What brings us joy is different. And if we keep chasing after something that doesn't belong to us, or we keep chasing after a goal that isn't for us, we're going to get to the end and realize that we were on the wrong path. It's not what we wanted to be on. You know, it was really interesting. I love to listen to all types of different books. And I just happened upon a book on boundaries. And I was like, well, you know what? Who doesn't need to know more about boundaries? We all do. It's one of those skills that we're constantly building on and evolving. And I'm listening to the start of the book. And at the very beginning, it mentions moving at your own pace. And I was like, isn't that funny? A book on focusing development of learning boundaries is even saying, listen, to make this change, you're going to have to move at your own pace and be okay that your change or your transition may be quick, it may be slow, but it's going to be yours, your experience. And if that is true for just focusing on simple, basic skills, well, then what does that mean for the grand scheme of life? It means the same thing. Being at our own pace. It matters. It matters. Because when we're so focused on someone else's race, like I mentioned before, we miss out. So this week's quote is one that I really like, and it's the following: who cares what others are doing? The only question that matters is, am I progressing? So let's start with the first half of that. Who cares what others are doing? The reality is we all seem to care what everyone else is doing. We all seem to care what everyone else is doing. I'm here to tell you, cheer on your friends. Yes. Don't be absent or jealous. Just because someone is doing something that you may think that you want to be doing, that doesn't mean that you get jealous about it or that you get salty or frustrated or angry or upset. Cheer them on because your time is coming. But the reality is there's a whole lot of people watching you too. And those people tend to care whether you succeed or fail. And the reality is sometimes we don't know what side they're on. We don't know if they're cheering us on or if they're rooting for failure. Who cares? Oh, a lot of people do. But what do I want you to do? I want you just to focus on your own race. Cheer on your friends, even your frenemies. And if you don't want to cheer them on, okay, that we could talk about those details on a later date. But don't fall into this spiral of jealousy, because that's another trap. When we get jealous, we take our eyes off of our progression. When we get jealous, it hardens our hearts and we can't move forward in joy and in peace. And I don't know about you, but I will do anything to guard my peace. So who cares? A lot of people do. What do I want you to do? I want you not to care and worry about what everyone else is doing. And I want you to focus on your progression. And the only question that's truly going to matter is when you ask yourself if you are progressing. Because I promise you that you know that there's an area in your life that needs some attention. It could be simple, basic things like self-focus. I've heard self-care. Y'all have heard self-care on my sites. I talk about self-care. Trust me, I will be transitioning out of that because I realize I don't like it anymore. And this is why. We get so focused on self-care that we neglect the root of why we needed that care. So I also want to challenge you to have self-focus. It's like saying, I'm really tired. I'm going to do this because I need self-care and I need rest. Okay, well, did you actually figure out what the issue is as to what is the root cause as to why you're tired? Is it that you just have too much on your plate and you've been saying yes to everything and you haven't been saying no? And maybe we need to go back to that book on boundaries and we need to start setting some. So we stop overloading our schedule so we can actually get some quality sleep because we don't have as much to do. Focus on yourself. That's self-focus. Self-focus and self-care are two totally different things. Because when you focus on yourself, you're focusing on your root causes of your situations. You're looking internally on what your needs are, not just doing external activities to mask whatever is going on. Those are Band-Aids. Going to get a facial because you're stressed out is a Band-Aid. That's not the root cause of where your stress is coming from. But again, I want you to focus on what matters most is if you're progressing. So this week, take some time to focus in on yourself and identify where you have areas of improvement and focus on finding some progression. Finding progression. Setting a goal. It might be like, I need to just eat better. I'm going to work each day. I have no fuel in me. I'm exhausted because I didn't bring a lunch. This week, start focusing on bringing a lunch. Eating, getting away from your desk. Drinking some water, getting some sleep, taking some time just to be quiet. I can't tell you what the answer is because it's uniquely set to you. So remember, who cares what others are doing? Don't worry about what they're doing. The only question that truly matters is, are you progressing? That's our quote for this week. That's our challenge for this week. Till next time, I'll see you next week.